At this time, if there are questions that you would like to ask today, that's what this town hall is for, so that you can ask the question you care about. Because of the layout of the room and the number of people here, I would ask that you come forward to speak into the microphone. Please say your name and the town you're from prior to asking your question.
Thank you for being here. My name is Rex, and I live here in Sioux City, and I'm not very smart. I don't really understand economics too well. Could you tell me in a few words what would happen if there were no Federal Reserve System? And then the other part of it is, isn't it so entrenched that you couldn't get rid of it?
Well, if you didn't have the Federal Reserve System, you would have sound money, you would not have inflation, your dollar would be of steady value, you would not have the business cycle, so you wouldn't have booms and busts. You would have a much smaller government because the Federal Reserve is able to finance the welfare and the warfare for a long time without people seeing, the complications. So that was the main purpose of the Federal Reserve, to endorse those, the ideas of the people who want bigger and bigger government, because wars are fought by printing the money, and inflation, and that same way is how they finance the welfare state. Now, as far as what you can do about it, even though I've written a book about ending the Fed, and I don't believe in central banking, I'm not calling for ending the Federal Reserve tomorrow, because it would be very disruptive. But we have to know what sound money is, we have to know where we're going and which way, how we're working. So my idea on so many of these programs, just like I was talking about the deficit, you can't do everything at once. Maybe we have to start with all this overseas spending and work our way out of it. On the Federal Reserve, you can just legalize competition in currency. The world operates with competing currencies all the time. But if you and I and others decided, well, the other day at the debates, I said that, if you had an old silver dime, before 1965, it's worth about $3.40 or $3.50. You can buy a gallon of gasoline. So really, prices are only a dime a gallon. So if you wanted to deal in silver money, the government's going to come down and arrest you, because some people have tried to do that. Even though it's called silver and it's legal tender and they're American coins, they say this paper that you can't define, a law never was written to say that a Federal Reserve note is $1. You have to use it. And another person decided that he mint his own coins, silver and gold coins. And the federal government came in and stole all his money from him, all his gold and silver. All I want to do is legalize freedom of choice. And then if somebody say, that gold stuff is crazy, and I want those Federal Reserve notes because I know they're so valuable, and I'll put them in a shoebox and they'll be worth something forever. And other people say, no, I'd rather put a gold coin in my shoebox. But no, it would be competing currency. Friedrich Hayek wrote about this, and he was an Austrian economist, no longer living, but he suggested this as an alternative to just closing down the Federal Reserve. Okay.
And if you have a question, please go ahead and come up here and form a line.
Hi, Mr. Paul. My name is Greg. I'm from Sioux City, Iowa. $7.5 trillion. Do you think it's still time that we can still save the United States of America?
$7.5 trillion debt? No, it's a little bit more than that. Matter of fact, it's the national debt is $14 trillion, but the entitlement obligation is more like, nobody knows exactly, $60 or $70 trillion. It's not, no, we can save the United States, but we can't save the United States and maintain the empire and maintain the welfare state. That has to go. It's just not
My name is Greg. I'm from Sioux City, Iowa. What I want to ask about is, of course, you agree with the Constitution, so you agree that our rights come from our Creator and not from our government. Well, with that being said, my Creator says that I have to stand by Israel. Genesis 12:3 in the Bible says that if you bless, that's all right.
Israel will be blessed.
Will be blessed. A lot of people have come out and said that a vote for Ron Paul is a vote against Israel. Could you defend that, please.
Sure. I think our current policies are very dangerous for Israel because I want to treat Israel like every other country. They should be our best friend and our best neighbor, and we should travel and trade with them. But I believe, just like if you overly indulge anybody with subsidies or benefits, they will become dependent on you. So Israel's totally dependent on us for monetary reasons, and we're pro. So that's going to end. They've been totally dependent on us for military reasons. So what do? The American people have spent like $30 billion or so propping up Mubarak, in Egypt, buying his friendship. Well, he got thrown out, and where'd that money go? Well, it was a bought friendship. And now they have serious problems over there. Our problem has jeopardized Israel. You take Turkey and Egypt now are becoming close allies, and they're not moving. They were the two countries that were closest with Israel. Now they're moving away from Israel. So I don't want to give foreign aid to anybody. You say, oh no, I mean, you got to give foreign aid to Israel. But you know what? If you cut all the foreign aid, the Arab nations get 7 times as much as Israel gets. So you're really benefiting Israel by cutting the foreign aid. And besides, we don't have the money. So I think that Israel is not secure under these conditions. Israel has the strongest military over there. Israel cannot get a peace treaty with a neighbor without getting permission from us. I believe Israel should demand their sovereignty. And if they want to be tough with their neighbors, I supported Israel in the early 80s when they took out the nuclear site in Iraq. Because it wasn't so much that I personally thought, well, this was a grand idea. I took my neutral position and said that that's up to Israel to do it. So I think Israel has probably 300 nuclear weapons, and the Arabs Pakistan has them and India has them. But I just think Israel would be a lot better off, and they better prepare for the day of our bankruptcy and when we have to leave, and we will have to leave. So, but I really think that the policy we have today is long-term not beneficial to Israel.
I just want to say thank you for taking the stand that you did. I know it's a tough gig that you've taken on. And I like what you said about the trial. The trial that we've gone through as a nation is unfortunate. We're in a tough spot, but you're absolutely right. Without that, we wouldn't have woken up to a lot of the things that have gone wrong. My question to you is how in the world, for 80+ years, have we allowed the Constitution to be eroded to the point to where we have a super Congress? Could you? What is that?
I think we'd have trouble finding that.
If you could touch on
But
that.
he's talking about the 12 appointees that are supposed to straighten this mess out. But we've drifted in that direction. Ready? You take trade agreements. The Congress is responsible for trade agreements. But instead of having the trade agreements and deciding tariffs and all this, what we do is we give the power to the executive branch. We say, well, we're going to let you negotiate the treaty that will be up and down votes. So we've already done this. And we just reneged on our responsibilities as far as the war issues go. The amazing thing is probably in the Congress, the people, I think, were lackadaisical and careless and didn't pay attention and figured that the wealth would take care of us forever and there'd be no problem. But probably the most amazing thing that I don't think any one person has an answer for is why was the Congress so willing and eager to give up its responsibilities? The founders wrote it so, the Capitol's the highest spot in Washington. It was supposed to be, because it was the people's representation there. It's higher than the Supreme Court, higher than the White House, and yet they've reneged on this. What about writing regulations? There's nothing in there that says the executive branch writes regulations. Why does the Supreme Court and other courts write laws? They're not allowed to do that. We've been, so I blame the system, but I blame the American people too. We have a responsibility, but I think that's what's changing. So it is awfully aggravating, but it didn't start off that this would have happened overnight and they took over, the people would have rebelled. But it was just insidious and slow, and there's always an emergency, there's always a war going on, And this is the reason people, you know, whether it's foreign policy or financial, it's always an absolute emergency, and if you don't do it, things are going to get much worse, so people are frightened into going along with it.
Hi, my name is Brad. I'm from Blue Earth, Minnesota. I studied at the University of South Dakota, and I also studied at the Cato Institute this summer and had a chance to meet your son. My question is, a lot of all this foreign policy, whether we realize it or not, stems from the ideals of a manifest destiny and American exceptionalism. How do these ideals shape who we are as Americans today, and how should this shape us as Americans, as citizens of the world?
Now, that's a good question, and it is the issue of exceptionalism. That came up in the debates. And this idealism is sort of a Woodrow Wilson idealism, and that we're an exceptional nation, and we have this manifest destiny to take care of the world. Well, that's a distortion, I think, of a healthy attitude, because I happen to think that we had been, could be, an exceptional nation and demonstrate to the world what a free society is like, emphasizing where rights come from. And then if we did that properly, others might want to follow us. Then we would be the most prosperous and the freest country in the world, and we wouldn't be involved in wars and picking wars, and now accepting this position that we have the responsibility to show how exceptional we are, but we can use force to tell. That's why we're in the Middle East, a lot of this exceptionalism, that we have all this goodness. Woodrow Wilson described it as making the world safe for democracy. Well, you can't spread goodness with bombs and guns and war. What we need to do is work on ourselves here at home and make ourselves an exceptional nation, and then others would emulate us, and then that would be a true influence on the world.
My name is Mary Gillis, and I'm from Akron, Iowa. And I thank you very much for being here, and I'm honored to meet you. And I really believe you're going to be the next president. And yeah. Since the Democratic Party and the Republican Party have, in a lot of people's minds, a corrupt definition, if I could say that. I think of them as being corrupt. Neither one of them are any good. When I tell people, don't vote for Ron Paul because he's a Republican or he's not a Democrat. Vote for him as the man that he is. The man of integrity and the man with the ideas that you have. Look at that. Don't look at the Republican Party. So how can you help me understand how I can explain your Republicanism?
Seems to me like she's done a pretty good job. You know, and I think that is an important issue because and I get asked that question a whole lot. Are you just one more candidate, and how are you different? Well, obviously, I am different. I take a different position on the war, and this is not a Democratic position, although a lot of Democrats agree with it. A lot of Republicans did. Eisenhower warned us about the military-industrial complex, so it is very conservative, libertarian, constitutionalist to have a different opinion about going to war. The personal liberties, whether it's, you know, in all these debates we've had so far, I recognize the Patriot Act has never come up. It's of no importance to these people who run this. And yet you had a response there. You know about the Patriot Act, and you know about the TSA agents. So no, I think it's personal liberty, a different foreign policy, sound money. I mean, that is a big issue. And I think you're right. And I mentioned that in my talk, like, you know, when Republicans get in charge, we get Democratic policies passed. When the Democrats are in charge, we get Republican policies in the negative sense. So, and I think that's probably where my greatest strength is, and the strength of our campaign is that, that we're independent in the sense that it's not going to be the same old thing again. Like AJ mentioned, it's not like I'm just coming and telling you this. because he mentioned I have a voting record, and I was always very pleased during the last campaign, and even now, people will come up, they say, this is the first time I've heard of you, so I went to the internet to look up. He said, my goodness, you actually voted that way.
Hi, I'm Jesse Jesse Finken from Sioux City. I've never seen such blatant manipulation of media against you, and I'm wondering how we can fight it. What your thoughts are, because I think our news is no longer giving us truth, and it is manipulating the masses, and that's just terrible. The informed people know what's going on. That's why we're here, and that's why we're fighting for you. The uninformed, it's not really their fault when they turn on Fox and CNN and see just blatant lies. And when you look on your polls online, you're just dominating everybody. And then the next day when I log on, it's like your percentage went way down. So I don't know what happened here. And
I tell you, I understand what you're saying, and it is annoying, but we do have weapons now that are more available to us than they were years ago, and that is in the internet. We do get a lot of information now. And because of the straw votes, you know, just like we had in California recently, people get energized and they pop. But let me tell you, what's happening in this state is pretty darn important, because as powerful as the media is, just as I said that economic laws are more powerful than governments and central bank. Well, we still have enough freedom in this country to get enough people to the polls. Now, if half the people who are sort of interested and they don't show up, yes, we can't prove ourselves. But the only proof is going to be in the final polling that counts. And that comes to the caucuses as well as the early primaries. And that's not many months off. That's about 5 months off, where we're going to know a lot more. Which means it's word of mouth, it's hard work, it's volunteering, it's phone calling. We have programs going with phone calling. And you know, there are some of these internet services that we have, and even our own, that are as big as some of these news stations. I mean, there are some so-called majors, and they don't have huge audiences. I mean, we can reach literally millions of people. So don't get too frustrated, but I know exactly what you're talking about. But we just have to compensate for it.
And I was at the Iowa straw poll, and I must say, I've seen more people there for you than all the candidates combined.
That's right.
I did lose a member of the media with that last question.
Oh, the media's here. Oh.
Okay. One thing I want to say is, well, about Paul, you don't have the flip-flops on. Okay, but I want to define this question because a lot of people are confused on the Israel question, okay? Yes, we have to stop all foreign spending, okay? But here's what a lot of people are worried about. They're worried about that Egypt, Pakistan, everyone's going to invade Israel. Now, we can clarify this, maybe we can get some more people on board. If Israel was invaded to the point of annihilation of the United States, or would Congress be able to vote to protect Israel and their borders?
Well, that would depend on the people in the Congress, but I just don't think that we should, I don't think a Congress now has the moral right to commit the next generation to an automatic war.
Yeah.
And it's like when we have these treaties with Taiwan and other places, and the draft is still on the books, the registration for draft. So that means that if you commit to automatic war, that means that you're committing the next generation of people who never had a chance to vote. So I would say, under those circumstances you described, I can't conceive of that happening, because Israel's not going to allow it to happen.
Well, no, I know,
but if it did, then Congress should have an up and down vote and make a decision. But it should not be automatic. It shouldn't be the way Obama does it, just march in and take over another country.
No, it's not in the Constitution, but that was just Glenn Beck thing or whatever. You know the Glenn Beck thing.
Hello, Mr. Dr. Paul. Nice to meet you. I just wanted to, first of all, thank you for running for president one more time.
Woo!
The country needs you more than most of them realize. You're definitely against the Federal Reserve. It's one of the biggest reasons I support you. You introduced the bill 2755 back in 2007. You've been against the Federal Reserve for the past 27 years. You've been in Congress. Not too much has been done against them since then, but after you get to presidency, and I do believe you will, what are the actual chances of getting rid of the Federal Reserve? I mean, is it really plausible? Are we really going to be able to shake the grips of the power makers?
Okay, I guess we could visit the history of Thomas Jefferson. He got rid of the central bank, the first national bank, and Andrew Jackson got rid of the second national bank. It wouldn't be as easy this time, but a president can be very cautious about appointments before you get rid of it. And earlier on, I talked about competing currencies. You don't have to get rid of it overnight. You just allow people to get out of the system and still be within the law. But no, I think that the Federal Reserve will have to go. They'll probably self-destruct if we continue to do this because they'll lose their efficiency. But we just can't continue to do it this way.
We have time for one more question today.
Perfect timing.
Good to see you again. I've been following your career for some time. Today you speak mostly about monetary policy, but I understand you feel there is too much government regulation and too much tax. On that I would like to ask a question. On your trip here today, did you fly on unregulated airline? Did you take off and land on a private or municipal airport? Did you travel on private or public roads? Aren't you glad your various means of transportation had passed federal safety regulations?
I don't know. I had an airplane problem today. My plane. No, I mean, your point is well taken, but the assumption should never be if government weren't there, it would be a better way of doing it. You know, like, let's say tomorrow we did have a post office. You think you would all of a sudden suffer, you'd never get first-class mail delivered again? No, there's other ways. You don't have to, I mean, highways, matter of fact, Eisenhower, when he started the interstate highway system, he still believed in the Constitution, so he had to sort of justify it. He says, oh, this will be for national defense purposes. So he still had respect. But you could still have gasoline taxes to get and pay for your highways, and local government, all states and local communities can do whatever they want under the federal Constitution, so there's a lot of leeway. And there's been some pretty good research about regulating FAA stuff. I mean, it can be done. Their computers are a mess right now. You know, boy, there are some times when you get delayed hours and hours and hours. So to say that the government didn't do it, you'd have nothing but chaos, that isn't true. A lot of people will come up to me and they say, you don't believe in all this SEC and all this regulation stuff. I said, no. When I said no regulation, no, I want tougher regulations. The tougher regulations would have been if a company or a bank went bankrupt, they'd have to go to bankrupt. That's what the rule of law would be. Not for you to have to pay for the bailout. So the regulations, you can't defraud, you can't steal, you can't hurt people, you have to live up to your promises, you can't counterfeit money. All these things are very, very strict, much stricter than the regulations in Washington. If you have an FDA, say, well, no, the FDA, you can't do without the FDA, they're going to protect us. Yeah, they end up prohibiting you from buying your nutritional products in order to protect the drug companies. And regulations, then you have to ask, who are the lobbyists for those who are going to be regulated? The lobbyists then write the regulations, so bank lobbyists write the regulations for the bank, the drug companies write the regulations there, always to make you safe and secure. Quite frankly, you're not as safe and secure than if you were making your own decisions. I think it's a travesty on what they do with alternative health care and nutritional products. They're marching in and arresting people for selling vitamins. Oh yes, we got to protect people.
Or lemonade, Ron.
No, there are a lot of regulations. They're just different. Thank you. Thank you very much.